We are following some breaking developments in a violent political crisis in Iraq. Protesters loyal to an influential Shia cleric are now leaving Baghdad's green zone, effectively putting an end to days of violence and unrest. That as Canadian officials urge citizens to leave the region. At least 30 people have died in the past 2 days and more than 400 others have been wounded. The violence broke out after the cleric resigned suddenly yesterday over political infighting with rival Shia factions. Neighboring Iran has closed its border with Iraq, and meanwhile, Ottawa is warning against all travel in that country. Rebecca Collard has more from Berlin.
This is really some of the worst violence we've seen in Iraq since ISIS was more or less defeated in the country. But what makes this specifically significant is that it's happening around Baghdad's green zone. Now, the green zone is this fortified area of the Iraqi capital that houses a lot of Iraqi institutions, including the presidential palace, which was stormed yesterday by protesters, and also foreign embassies. And there's some footage this morning of protesters outside the green zone, and then a man actually firing over this several-meter high concrete barrier into the green zone. Now, a little bit of context about why this violence and why these protests have erupted. Yesterday, Muqtada al-Sadr, who is a very powerful Shia cleric and politician, said that he was going to be leaving Iraqi politics. Now, his party, his bloc, won the most seats in the Iraqi elections in October, but it wasn't enough to form a government, and the negotiations to form a government have been unsuccessful. So it's been maybe 10 months, and the country still doesn't have a new government, and of course that is creating a lot of frustrations. Now, a little background to that, it has been almost 20 years since the U.S. invaded Iraq, and during its occupation it helped to set up this system of essentially sectarian governance in the country. So the idea is you have this political system where all of Iraq's sectarian and ethnic groups are represented, and the idea is that that will bring some sort of stability, peace, that people will feel some sort of buy-in in the national government in Baghdad. But in fact, if you talk to analysts and you talk to a lot of Iraqis that I've spoken to while reporting in the country, what that has done instead is created a system where there is no true democracy in Iraq, and Iraqis, even if they go to the polls, don't really have a choice in how their country is run. And at this point, it's been years since ISIS was defeated. Iraq, of course, is quite a wealthy country in terms of oil resources, yet people are still extremely poor. People in the capital that don't have electricity, complains about lack of access to good healthcare. Really, the basic needs of a lot of Iraqis are not being met, despite the fact that this country has so many resources. And I think a lot of people and a lot of protesters we've seen in the streets since 2019 are pointing to the political system that governs Iraq, but also the people that have been in power for a long time. And I'll just say, these clashes that we're seeing now are not sectarian clashes. They are actually between two rival Shia groups, Sadrs and another rival Shia group. But they are extremely dangerous. We've seen Muqtada Sadr come out and actually say, condemn the violence that has been really instigated by his supporters. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.